I'm working with Snake version 3, where we left off in the previous video. We used the sculpt tool to flatten out underneath, and now I want to build some detail for the eyes. There's a couple of ways I can do this, and by selecting just these polygons here, and again I'm in Z symmetry mode, I can bevel these in and kind of do some things like that, and it's not quite the accuracy I want for what we're going to do. So I'm going to go to edges, and I'm going to select this guy, go to geometry tab, and choose slide. But let's use duplicate command, and when I click and drag, I'll actually duplicate this, and we'll pull that down. And that can give us a little bit more geometry in there, just like that, but still allows us to keep the shape of the head. And in fact, we could probably do it one more time. So geometry, slide, and we'll just drag it up this way. And then I'm going to select this one and then just scale it down on the y-axis a little bit. Let me go back real quick. And just shape that head. There we go. All right, so that just gives a little bit more geometry and a little more meat right in this area, and kind of gives the illusion of an elongated snout a little bit more. Not that a snake would have a snout, but I don't know what it's called. So now we have just one small polygon here. This, of course, then we could just bevel in. Now, of course, that bevel looks a little crazy, but it still gives us the extra geometry we need. And what I'm going to do is just shift this in and inset just a little bit, kind of like that. Okay, because all we really want to do is create these eye sockets. And I'm going to just deselect those for the time being. And let's get back to edge mode. And I'm going to try and get this edge in here all the way around. Let's try and do it like that. It's a little bit better. And then we're going to geometry and slide this a little bit. Oops. Remember what I told you earlier? Got to turn that duplicate off because it remembers. So turn that off, then slide it. And that will pull out that front of the eye socket, helping to smooth it out just a little bit. All right, so how can we do more with this eye socket? I like how they are, but we could shape it a little bit. So with that polygon selected, Shift A brings a selection to view, and I'm just going to rotate. And I have just pressed my Y command to rotate, and then just drag these a bit. I can pull them in a little bit, and you can see just less is more. We have a lot more control when working with a little bit less polygon, and it's always easy to add more than it is to take away. Shift, let's turn that off with spacebar. Shift up arrow, I can expand the selection, and then I can press the R key for scale, and then I can actually just scale these areas out a little bit. And maybe make it a little taller. And just kind of rounds out that area. And the reason I'm not worried about getting too precise in there is because we're going to use a great new feature in Modo to build our eyes. All right, so let me do that now. So good little eye socket. I might want a little bit more edge in here. I'm going to do that in a minute. But here's our snake body. Let's go to Add Item in the Items tab and choose Mesh. We're going to create a new blank mesh. And in this area, we're going to go to Model, select the Ball tool, and then hold the control key, and we're going to drag out an eyeball. Easy enough. Shift A brings it to view. And let's press O, get to our options, and then under drawing and control, inactive meshes is same as active mesh. And that way we'll be able to see everything. And then we'll take the eyeball and let's move it out. Ah, my symmetry is still on. See that? So I'm actually only moving the one side. So let me undo this. Symmetry off. See, I tell you everything, but I don't listen to myself. And all I'm doing is just placing this eyeball in here. Now it looks really cheesy, right? Yeah, you really want to build this in. You don't quite want it to be just sitting there. Well, you don't have to. All right, so what we're going to do, once we get that placed, looks pretty good, right? You want it to blend a little bit, and honestly, it's perfectly fine like that. But, we can go better. Let's jump over to the Render tab, and Shift A fits our eyeball. Pull that out. I think I'm on the wrong side of the head there. All right, here's a little trick. I'm trying to get my camera to show up in my view there. And I know it's right here like this, right? Okay, so I'm going to select the camera, and there's a button right there called Sync to View. And what this will do is take my perspective view, which I already pretty much had lined up, and it will take this perspective view and make it my camera view. Easy enough. Let's select our directional light, which is right there at the center of the screen. It's hard to see, so I'm going to go to Display tab, and for the size, I'm going to press 0. And what that does is it keeps it relative depending on how large or small my scene is. And this way I can always see it. And I'm going to rotate it kind of down like that. All right, so eyeball just sitting there. It can work for the snake. We can attach it. But once we do all the shading, let me just come in here. We haven't done any shading yet. I'm going to select the base material. Again, we haven't put any shading on. But there's a new feature in Modo called Rounded Edge Width. And the way it's been shown is that it can, let's say for CAD models brought in, and those hard edges, it will shade those edges so you don't have to bevel it. And a lot of times with certain models like CAD models, you cannot bevel. It just destroys it. But there's another cool feature about this, is that when objects are actually just put together, it blends them. So here's the geometry, and here's the model. Oh, pretty cool, huh? So just another feature that was added in 601. And again, it's the round edge width. It's on the material. But when you put two objects together and you use this, it will blend them. So I don't have to worry about booleans. I don't have to worry about cutting. I don't have to worry about modeling in this eyeball. I just made a ball and I stuck it in there. And as I bring this edge up, and my grid size here, and the way I'm figuring out this measurement, this eyeball, right? Okay, if we're at a 1 meter grid, my eyeball, it's about 1 meter in size. So if we did 1 meter, what would happen? We'd kind of erase almost, right? So we want maybe 10% of that or so. So I'll go 80 millimeters. And it just blends it in. Okay, so let's save that now as version 4. See? That's worth the price of the course alone. Just doing something like that. And really, truly, think about the possibilities of what you can do with that down the road for doorknobs and bolts and things that look weathered and have to blend in. Again, it works great on edges of things that are rounded, like this. Let me just create something entirely new here real quick. Come over here to the Model tab, and let's just say you got a box, and pretend this box is so bad from a CAD model. Renders terrific, but if you go and try and bevel the edges, which is what you would normally do, let's get to edge mode here, and you would just normally just bevel this out, just to round those, and put a round level on there like that. Normally that would be perfect, but when you bring in heavy data from CAD programs and SolidWorks and other things like that, they simply just won't do that for you. It's just not built the right way. And that's one reason this shader is in here. And again, it's just part of the base material. It's called the rounded edge shader. Here it says, you'll hear it called rounded edge shader, but it says rounded edge width. And all you have to do is just add some of that. And again, you won't see it in the OpenGL, but you'll see it in the render. And it won't destroy your model. But beyond that, blending two models together, it will make it look like it's part of it. So very cool feature. So now what we're going to do is just take that eyeball and we're going to cut it, go back to the snake and paste it. Okay. And Shift A will fit this ball to view. Let me just select it first. And then let's just mirror it over. And the way we're going to mirror it is with the mirror tool. Shift V is my mirror tool. We're going to be on the Z axis. And then I'll just kind of click right here down the Z and you'll see it pop over right there. And it looks pretty even. All I really want to do now is just kind of work on the brow. Give this guy a little bit meaner look because he looks a little too Barney-like. So how can we do that? Pretty simply, really. We can just select this edge up here. Let's go back to symmetry on the Z. Select this edge. Press the T key. And let's just see if we can grab on that sucker right there and move it. Okay. Now what happens is that we move everything out. Is that really what we want to do? Well, no. So what we'll do instead is just bevel. And that gives us just a little bit extra meanness right there that we need. And then we can tweak with the T command, shape this out, pull this down. And again, it kind of goes back what I was saying in the beginning. Less is more. And that way we can always add a little bit, but it can always take away too, but it's actually better to just add. And then we can shape this just kind of like this, and tweak these a little bit. Give him a nice little brow. And if you jump over here to the render, you can see this is what we're doing. Just shaping that out. And we get a nice smooth transition in there. Looks a little meaner. All right, so I'll probably take a little bit of time and just kind of finesse this a bit, pull these around. And again, working in symmetry mode, so it happens on both sides. And I like that little muscle behind the eye, kind of like that. Helps shape the back of the head. And then I might use element move just to kind of pull this down a little bit here and shape that out. Maybe just pull this back a little bit. Okay, so if you've gotten to that point, you can go ahead and do that on your own and just shape that out. Perhaps pull the brow down a little bit here. And again, my range on this is 0, so I'm not actually pulling anything than the point I'm clicking on. All right, so let's do one more video after this and fix the inside of the mouth, and then we can get to some shading and surfacing.